Are you struggling with the weight of depression, feeling like it's an unshakable shadow over your life? What if I told you that the very struggles you're facing could become the catalyst for an extraordinary transformation? In How to Beat Depression, an overcoming story, you'll dive into a journey that reveals the powerful secret to turning despair into hope. Meet Jhon and Sarah, a couple who once felt trapped in a seemingly endless cycle of anxiety and hopelessness. Jhon, overwhelmed by the burden of depression, seemed destined to live a life of constant struggle. But what if I told you that Jhon's darkest days were actually setting the stage for his most remarkable breakthrough? Together with Sarah, they embraced a path that led them to not only overcome their personal demons but to become a guiding light for thousands. Through gripping real-life events, practical mental health tips, and deeply personal reflections, this story uncovers how Jhon's journey from despair to triumph can offer you not just hope but actionable steps to reclaim your own life. Imagine transforming your pain into purpose, your struggles into strength. This is not just a possibility but a reality that Jhon and Sarah achieved. Ready to discover how to fight depression and emerge stronger than ever? Join us as we explore the profound changes that led to a life filled with meaning, connection, and true happiness. This story isn't just about overcoming obstacles. It's about rewriting your life's script and finding a path to enduring joy. Let's dive in and see how you can begin your own journey to beat depression and live a life of fulfillment. Jhon, a 38-year-old man, lived what many would call an ordinary life. He was married to Sarah, a devoted and caring woman, and they had 2 young children who brought joy and chaos into their home. Jhon worked as a project manager at a tech company, where he was known for his attention to detail and unwavering dedication. His days followed a consistent routine, waking up early to enjoy breakfast with his family, heading to work where he spent hours managing projects, and then returning home to help with dinner and the children's bedtime. Jhon had a few passions that he made time for even with his busy schedule. He loved reading about history, particularly military strategy, and often spent his weekends immersed in thick books or carefully assembling miniature models of famous battles. Another hobby he cherished was cooking, a skill he had honed over the years. Every Saturday he would try out new recipes, filling the house with the aroma of fresh herbs and spices, much to the delight of his family. The kitchen was his retreat, a place where he could forget the stresses of work and focus on creating something delicious. In his social circle, Jhon was the dependable one, the friend everyone could count on for advice or a helping hand. He had a small group of close friends with whom he'd catch up over coffee or a casual game of golf. Though not particularly outgoing, he valued these connections and enjoyed the camaraderie that came with them. His life, by all appearances, was stable and fulfilling, and he took pride in the role he played as a husband, father, and friend. Every evening after the kids were asleep, Jhon would unwind with Sarah, watching their favorite shows or discussing the events of the day. These moments of quiet companionship were the highlights of his day, a time to relax and recharge before the cycle began again. Jhon's life was not without challenges, but they were the kind of everyday obstacles that most people face. In many ways he was content, finding comfort in the predictability of his routine and the simple pleasures it offered. Jhon's world was one of consistency and familiarity. He had carved out a life that many would consider enviable, filled with love, responsibility, and a sense of purpose. Yet, as he moved through his daily routine, he had no idea that everything he had grown accustomed to was about to be tested in ways he could never have anticipated. Jhon's life took an unexpected turn when he began experiencing a profound sense of fatigue that no amount of rest could shake off. It started subtly, just a few days here and there where he felt unusually tired. But soon the fatigue became a constant companion. He found himself struggling to focus at work, something that had never been an issue before. His enthusiasm for his hobbies began to wane, and the activities that once brought him joy now seemed burdensome. He started skipping his Saturday cooking sessions, something his family noticed immediately. His books, once a source of endless fascination, now gathered dust on the shelf. At first, Jhon attributed his exhaustion to the stress of balancing work and family life. However, the fatigue was just the beginning. He started withdrawing from social interactions, even avoiding his close friends. Jhon, who had always been the dependable one, began canceling plans, citing work as an excuse. The truth was, he couldn't muster the energy to engage with others, and he felt a growing sense of disconnection from the people around him. This isolation fed into a deeper issue that he was reluctant to acknowledge. He was feeling overwhelmingly sad for reasons he couldn't explain. Jhon's depression didn't stem from a single cause but rather a combination of factors. He had always been a bit of a perfectionist, holding himself to impossibly high standards. When he couldn't meet these standards, the self-criticism would be relentless. Over time, this internal pressure began to wear him down. Additionally, there was a history of depression in his family, something he had always brushed aside, thinking it wouldn't affect him. But now, it seemed that genetics were playing a role in his mental health, and the realization that this was beyond his control only deepened his sense of despair. The impact on his daily life was significant. At work, his productivity plummeted, and tasks that used to take him minutes now stretched into hours. His once clear mind was now clouded with negative thoughts, and he found himself questioning his worth. At home, he became distant, no longer engaging with his family as he once did. Sarah noticed the change, but whenever she asked if something was wrong, Jhon would dismiss her concerns, insisting that he was just tired. However, deep down he knew something far more serious was happening. Jhon was reluctant to admit that he was struggling with depression. It was a word he had always associated with others, not himself. But now, it was clear that he was facing a battle within that he didn't know how to fight. The man who once thrived on routine and responsibility was now grappling with a problem that threatened to unravel everything he had built. As Jhon's depression deepened, it became clear that he couldn't continue on this path alone. One morning, Jhon received an unexpected email from a colleague, inviting him to join a team on a project overseas. The opportunity was both exciting and terrifying. It was a chance to work on something innovative and groundbreaking, but it would mean leaving his family behind for several months and stepping into an unknown environment. At first, Jhon hesitated. The thought of leaving his familiar routine, especially when he was still grappling with depression, felt overwhelming. He questioned whether he was strong enough to take on such a challenge when he was already struggling just to get through the day. Sarah noticed Jhon's internal conflict and felt a deep sense of sadness at the prospect of him leaving. The thought of him being so far away, especially when he was going through such a difficult time, weighed heavily on her. Their connection had always been strong, and she had felt the distance growing between them as his depression deepened. The idea of him being physically distant as well was almost too much to bear. Yet, Sarah also recognized the potential this opportunity held for Jhon. She knew how much he needed a change, something to reignite his passion and help him reclaim the spark that depression had dimmed. With a heavy heart, Sarah encouraged Jhon to consider taking the offer. She knew this new challenge might be exactly what he needed to rediscover his drive and zest for life. Sarah believed that, despite the pain of separation, this could be the catalyst for Jhon to begin healing. She told him, "I'll miss you more than words can say, but I believe this could be good for you. Maybe a new challenge is exactly what you need to start feeling like yourself again." Her support was unwavering even though it meant enduring the sadness of his absence. She was willing to bear that burden if it meant giving Jhon a chance to find himself again. Leaving his family was one of the hardest things Jhon had ever done. He was riddled with guilt and anxiety about being away from them, especially knowing how much Sarah was sacrificing by supporting his decision. But there was also a small part of him that felt a flicker of excitement, something he hadn't felt in a long time. As he boarded the plane, Jhon couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into a completely new world. The familiar comforts of home were now thousands of miles away, and all he had was his determination to see this through. The decision marked a significant turning point in his journey. He was no longer just trying to survive his depression. He was actively seeking out a way to overcome it. The new environment was both challenging and refreshing. Jhon found himself surrounded by new faces, new ideas, and new experiences. The project demanded his full attention, and for the first time in months, he was able to immerse himself in work without the constant cloud of depression hanging over him. The change of scenery, coupled with the daily mindfulness practices Michael had taught him, began to create a shift in his mindset. Jhon was not just surviving. He was starting to thrive in this unfamiliar territory, facing his fears and embracing the unknown. Jhon's decision to take on the project wasn't just about work. It was a symbolic crossing of the threshold into a new phase of his life. He was moving away from the safe, predictable world he had known, and into a space where anything was possible. This journey was far from easy, but it was necessary. It was a step towards reclaiming the parts of himself that had been lost to depression and finding new strengths he didn't know he had. As Jhon settled into his new environment, the challenges began to mount. The project was more demanding than he had anticipated, pushing him to his limits both mentally and physically. Late nights and tight deadlines became the norm, leaving Jhon exhausted and often questioning whether he had made the right choice. The pressure was intense, and there were moments when the weight of his depression seemed to return, threatening to pull him under once again. The unfamiliar surroundings, combined with the stress of the job, created a perfect storm of doubt and anxiety. But amidst these challenges, a new kind of pain began to surface, an aching longing for his family, especially for Sarah. Being so far from home made Jhon realize just how much he loved and missed them. The distance was more than just physical, it was emotional, and it deepened his appreciation for the life he had left behind. Every video call with Sarah and the kids was bittersweet. He cherished their faces, their voices, but each call also reminded him of what he was missing. The simple routines of family life that once felt mundane now seemed precious. The absence of Sarah's comforting presence, her understanding smile, and the warmth of their home was a void that nothing in this new world could fill. Despite the physical distance, Jhon found himself growing closer to his family in a different way. He began to understand how much they meant to him, how much he needed them to feel whole. This realization became a source of strength, something that pushed him to keep going even on the hardest days. Each task that he completed, each problem he solved became a small victory not just for himself but for his family. He wanted to make them proud, to show them that this journey was worth it, that he was not just surviving, but fighting to become a better version of himself. Jhon wasn't alone in this journey. He began to form bonds with some of his new colleagues who quickly became his allies. There was Lisa, a seasoned project manager who always had a calm demeanor even in the most chaotic situations. She saw the potential in Jhon and often offered him words of encouragement when he needed them most. Then there was Carlos, a fellow engineer who shared Jhon's passion for the project. They often worked late into the night together, bouncing ideas off each other and sharing stories about their lives back home. These connections provided Jhon with the support he needed to navigate the challenges he was facing. But not everyone was as supportive. There were others on the team who saw Jhon as an outsider, someone who didn't belong. They questioned his decisions, doubted his capabilities, and weren't shy about expressing their skepticism. These individuals became his adversaries, making his journey even more difficult. The tension was palpable, and there were times when Jhon felt like he was fighting a losing battle. Yet these challenges only strengthened his resolve. With each test he grew more confident, more determined to prove himself, not just to his colleagues but to himself. And through it all, his love for his family became his guiding light, reminding him of what truly mattered. As the project neared its completion, Jhon could feel the tension rising. The final stages were the most crucial, and failure was not an option. Everything he had worked for, all the challenges he had overcome, were leading up to this moment. But with the end in sight, Jhon also felt the weight of his depression trying to pull him back into the darkness. The fear of failure loomed large, and the thought of disappointing his team, and more importantly his family, was almost too much to bear. He knew that this final test would be the hardest yet. Jhon began to prepare himself mentally and emotionally for what was to come. He spent more time reflecting on the journey he had taken, the lessons he had learned, and the strength he had gained along the way. The mindfulness practices that Michael had taught him became even more important during this time. Each morning, Jhon would start his day with meditation, focusing on his breathing, grounding himself in the present moment. This routine helped him to calm his mind and keep his emotions in check as the pressure mounted. His thoughts often drifted back to Sarah and the kids. They were his anchor, his reason for pushing through, and he drew strength from the love he felt for them. Jhon knew that he couldn't afford to let his fear and anxiety take over. He had to remind himself that he was not the same person who had been consumed by depression. He had grown, evolved, and learned to fight back. The project was not just a professional challenge. It was a symbol of his own journey towards healing and self-discovery. Jhon told himself that if he could overcome depression, he could overcome this final hurdle as well. As the final deadline approached, Jhon also leaned on his allies, Lisa and Carlos. They had become more than just colleagues. They were friends who believed in him and supported him through thick and thin. The three of them often met after hours to review their progress, discuss strategies, and encourage each other. Lisa reminded Jhon of the importance of staying focused, while Carlos brought a sense of humor to the stressful situation, helping to lighten the mood when things got tough. Their camaraderie made a world of difference, and Jhon knew that he wasn't facing this challenge alone. The night before the final presentation, Jhon couldn't sleep. His mind was racing with thoughts of what could go wrong, but also with a sense of determination that had been building up inside him. He knew that this was the moment he had been preparing for, not just during the project but throughout his entire journey. This was his chance to prove to himself that he had the strength to overcome anything, that he was capable of not just surviving but thriving. The stage was set for the final confrontation, and Jhon was ready to face whatever came his way. The day of the final presentation arrived, and the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Jhon could feel the pressure building, not just from the stakes of the project but from the weight of his own expectations. He had worked tirelessly, given his all, and this was the moment that would either validate his efforts or expose his fears. As he stood before the audience, presenting his work, Jhon could feel his heart racing, his palms sweating, and an overwhelming sense of vulnerability washing over him. Just as Jhon began to speak, something went wrong. The presentation slides malfunctioned, the projector flickered, and for a few agonizing moments, the room was plunged into darkness. Jhon's mind went blank, and he could sense the critical eyes of his audience judging him. It felt like his world was crumbling around him, and the fear of failing in front of everyone made his heart pound louder. His carefully prepared speech seemed to unravel before his eyes, and he struggled to regain his composure. The crisis was unfolding, and it seemed like everything he had worked for was slipping away. In that moment of despair, Jhon felt a wave of sadness and frustration. He thought about Sarah, their late-night conversations, and how much he had relied on her support. The thought of disappointing her, of not living up to the potential she saw in him, was almost too much to bear. He felt as though he was letting everyone down, his team, his family, and most importantly, himself. The weight of the situation was crushing, and it seemed like all the progress he had made was unraveling. But then something shifted. Jhon took a deep breath, recalling the mindfulness practices that had become his lifeline. He centered himself, focusing on the present moment rather than the looming catastrophe. The darkness was temporary, and he reminded himself that he had faced and overcome so many challenges already. With a calm resolve, Jhon managed to regain control of the situation. He continued his presentation, speaking from the heart about the project and its significance. He was honest about the technical difficulties but also about the hard work and dedication that had gone into the project. The crisis became a turning point. As Jhon spoke, he felt a renewed sense of determination and clarity. The initial panic gave way to a profound understanding of his own strength and resilience. The audience responded positively, appreciating his honesty and the passion behind his words. Despite the mishaps, Jhon had managed to convey the essence of the project and his commitment to it. The experience was a painful reminder of the vulnerability and unpredictability of life, but it also highlighted the growth he had achieved. He had faced his deepest fears and emerged stronger, proving to himself that he could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. After the tumultuous presentation, Jhon's relief was palpable. The project, despite the hiccups, was a success. His team's hard work was recognized and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. For Jhon, the reward was not just in the accolades or the project's completion, but in the profound personal growth he had experienced. The crisis had tested his limits, but it had also revealed his true strength. He had confronted his fears, faced the darkness of his depression, and emerged with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. As Jhon looked back on his journey, he realized that the greatest reward was the self-discovery he had gained. He had learned how to manage his mental health effectively, incorporating mindfulness and coping strategies into his daily routine. The practices that Michael had introduced to him were now deeply embedded in his life. Jhon felt a new sense of empowerment and control over his emotions. He understood that while depression might never fully disappear, he had the tools to manage it and live a fulfilling life. Jhon's relationships with his colleagues had also transformed. The bonds he had formed with Lisa and Carlos were more than just professional. They were friendships forged in the fires of adversity. They had supported each other through thick and thin, and Jhon felt grateful for their presence in his life. Their camaraderie had been a crucial part of his journey, and the mutual respect and trust they had developed were invaluable rewards in themselves. Perhaps the most significant reward of all was the renewed connection with his family. The time apart had deepened his appreciation for them, and the distance had allowed him to see how much they meant to him. His relationship with Sarah had grown stronger, enriched by the understanding and support they had given each other. Jhon now saw the value in expressing his love and gratitude more openly. His family was no longer just a distant comfort but a vital part of his everyday strength. As Jhon moved forward, he knew that this experience had prepared him for future challenges. The lessons learned and the personal growth achieved were treasures that he would carry with him. The journey had been arduous, but the rewards were worth every struggle. Jhon was ready to embrace the future with a newfound sense of resilience and optimism, knowing that he had the capability to face whatever came his way. With the project completed and the rewards reaped, Jhon began to reflect on his journey. The trials and tribulations had been intense, but they had also led him to a place of profound transformation. His mental health, once a constant source of struggle, was now a managed aspect of his life. He had developed a set of strategies and routines that kept him grounded and centered, and he felt a sense of pride in the progress he had made. The person who had walked into this journey was not the same person who was walking out. Jhon's interactions with his colleagues had also shifted. The tension with the skeptics had eased, and he found himself in a position of respect and understanding within his team. The The project had not only been a professional success but had also fostered a collaborative environment where everyone's contributions were valued. Jhon had learned the importance of perseverance, teamwork, and the ability to stay true to oneself even under pressure. His relationship with Sarah and the kids was stronger than ever. The time apart had allowed him to appreciate the simple joys of family life more deeply. He made a conscious effort to spend quality time with them, to be present and engaged in their lives. The connection they shared was now enriched with a deeper sense of gratitude and love. Jhon realized that while the journey had been difficult, it had brought him closer to the ones he cherished most. As he began to think about returning to his familiar life, Jhon felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He was eager to apply the lessons he had learned and to continue growing in his personal and professional life. But he also knew that he would face new challenges and adjustments as he reintegrated into his old routine. The experience had taught him that growth was a continuous process, and he was ready to embrace it with an open heart. Jhon's return to his previous world was not a return to the status quo but a step forward into a renewed version of his life. The conflicts and struggles he had faced were now part of his past, but the growth and resilience he had developed were very much a part of his present and future. As he reconnected with his old life, Jhon carried with him a sense of accomplishment and a readiness to face whatever lay ahead. Jhon's return to his familiar world was a moment of both relief and introspection. As he stepped back into his old routine, he was greeted with the warmth of his family and the familiar sights of home. The feeling was surreal. It was as though he was seeing everything with new eyes. The challenges he had faced and the growth he had achieved gave him a fresh perspective on his everyday life. The mundane tasks that once felt burdensome now seemed like opportunities to appreciate the stability and comfort of his previous life. However, the transition wasn't without its hurdles. One evening, as Jhon was settling into his familiar routine, he was hit by a wave of negative thoughts. He was working on a report when he began to doubt his abilities. Thoughts of past failures and the fear of making mistakes started to creep in. The familiar voice of self-doubt whispered that maybe he hadn't really changed, that perhaps he was destined to repeat his old patterns. This flood of negativity threatened to overwhelm him, and Jhon could feel his anxiety rising. Remembering the mental health strategies he had learned, Jhon took a deep breath and paused. He acknowledged the negative thoughts but decided not to dwell on them. Instead of letting the self-doubt consume him, Jhon consciously chose to focus on positive affirmations. He recalled the moments of success from his project and the strength he had built during his journey. Jhon reminded himself of the skills he had developed, the support he had received, and the love from his family. He visualized the progress he had made and the future he was working towards. As he shifted his focus, Jhon felt the grip of negativity start to loosen. The positive thoughts and affirmations helped him regain his confidence. He approached his work with a renewed sense of purpose and determination, tackling the report with a clear mind. The negative thoughts, though still present, were no longer in control. Jhon had learned to manage his inner dialogue, replacing self-doubt with self-empowerment. This shift in perspective was a testament to his growth and the effectiveness of the mental health strategies he had embraced. Jhon's relationship with Sarah and the kids was strengthened by his time away. The distance had not only made him appreciate them more but had also given him new ways to express his love and gratitude. He made a conscious effort to be present and engaged in their lives, cherishing the moments they shared. The lessons he had learned about communication and emotional support were now integral to their relationship. Jhon was determined to build on this new understanding and to contribute positively to his family's happiness. The experience had also changed Jhon's perspective on his career. He was more focused and driven with a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges he had faced had equipped him with a deeper understanding of his own strengths and limitations. He was no longer the person who had been paralyzed by fear and self-doubt. Jhon approached his work with confidence and resilience, ready to tackle new projects with a clear sense of direction. Returning to his old world did not mean that Jhon had forgotten the journey he had undertaken. Instead, he embraced it as a vital part of his growth. The changes he had undergone were now embedded in his daily life, influencing how he approached challenges and interacted with others. Jhon had come full circle, but the person who had returned was a transformed individual, stronger, wiser, and more appreciative of the life he had once taken for granted. As Jhon settled back into his life, it became clear that the transformation he had undergone was far from ordinary. The growth and insights he had gained were too valuable to keep to himself. Together with Sarah, he decided to channel their experiences into something meaningful. They began giving seminars focused on helping people with anxiety and depression, drawing on their personal journey to provide hope and practical advice. Their seminars quickly gained traction. Jhon's authenticity and Sarah's empathetic approach resonated deeply with audiences. They shared their story of overcoming depression, offering practical mental health strategies and coping techniques that had worked for them. The seminars were more than just presentations. They were interactive sessions where participants could share their struggles and find support in a safe environment. Jhon and Sarah's combined efforts were making a tangible difference in people's lives. In addition to the seminars, Jhon embarked on writing a book. The book was a culmination of his experiences, filled with actionable tips, personal anecdotes, and strategies for beating depression naturally. It was well received, touching the lives of thousands who found solace and guidance in its pages. Jhon's book became a beacon of hope for many, and he was overwhelmed by the stories of how it had helped individuals find their path to recovery. The impact on Jhon and Sarah's lives was profound. Their commitment to helping others strengthened their bond and gave them a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just living their lives, they were actively shaping a brighter future for others. Their new mission had transformed their daily lives and provided them with a sense of fulfillment they had never experienced before. Jhon's personal change had not only affected his own life but had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond his immediate circle. His journey from struggle to triumph had inspired countless others, and his work had become a testament to the power of resilience and transformation. Jhon and Sarah had turned their pain into a powerful force for good, and their lives were a living example of the positive impact that personal growth and dedication to helping others can achieve. As Jhon and Sarah's new path unfolded, their lives were a testament to the remarkable transformation they had undergone. The routine they once knew was now infused with purpose and connection. The familiar was interwoven with the extraordinary, reflecting the changes they had embraced. Jhon's book and their seminars were not just professional endeavors but also extensions of their personal growth, creating a renewed sense of fulfillment and impact. Jhon's perspective on family life had shifted profoundly. Time spent with Sarah and the kids was no longer seen as a mere part of daily life. It had become sacred. Every family meal, every evening spent together, was cherished deeply. Jhon realized that these moments were the most valuable part of his life. He made a deliberate effort to be fully present during these times, free from distractions and work-related stress. Whether it was playing board games with the kids, having heartfelt conversations with Sarah, or simply enjoying a quiet evening together, these moments were now his highest priority. The newfound appreciation for family time had brought a new level of joy and satisfaction into Jhon's life. He understood that the quality time he spent with his loved ones was not just beneficial for them but was also a source of immense personal fulfillment. This realization had strengthened his family bonds and created a more harmonious and supportive home environment. The simple, everyday interactions were now infused with a sense of gratitude and joy. Jhon and Sarah continued to receive letters and messages from people whose lives had been touched by their seminars and Jhon's book. The feedback was a constant reminder of the positive change they were fostering in the world. They had become a beacon of hope for those struggling with similar challenges, and their story served as a powerful reminder of the possibility of transformation. Despite their success and impact, Jhon and Sarah remained grounded. They continued to apply the mental health strategies and positive habits that had become integral to their lives. The journey had taught them the importance of maintaining balance and staying connected to their core values. They were committed to their ongoing personal development and to supporting each other in their shared mission. Their renewed normal was a blend of the familiar and the transformative. Jhon and Sarah had seamlessly integrated their past experiences with their present endeavors, creating a life that was both deeply fulfilling and impactful. The transformation they had undergone was not just a chapter in their story but a foundation for the future. They were living proof that change, when embraced with openness and dedication, could lead to a profoundly enriched life. You've just witnessed a powerful transformation, where a life once overshadowed by depression was illuminated by resilience, love, and purpose. Jhon and Sarah's journey teaches us that even the darkest moments can be the beginning of a remarkable change. The path to overcoming depression isn't just about finding quick fixes. It's about embracing a journey of growth, understanding, and self-discovery. Now it's your turn to take action. Reflect on the insights shared and think about how you can apply them to your own life. Whether it's implementing practical mental health strategies, seeking support, or making small, impactful changes, remember that every step forward counts. The power to beat depression lies within you, and your journey can lead to profound transformation and fulfillment. If you found this story inspiring and want to learn more about overcoming challenges and living a meaningful life, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications. Stay connected to continue receiving valuable insights and support that can help you on your own path to wellness. Your story of overcoming depression and achieving a fulfilling life starts now. Let's embark on this journey together.